Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Inner Peace, Better Health. I'm your host, Sana, and this is the space where we explore the deep connections between healing, wellness, and living a life of true balance. Now, today we are diving into very transformative topics: healing, addiction, recovery, trauma, relapse, and holistic wellness. And I'm honored to be joined by an extraordinary guest, Lillian Easterly Smith. Listeners, Lillian's story is one of resilience, transformation, and service. From her personal journey of recovery to leading two impactful nonprofits, writing life changing curriculums, and helping others heal through holistic and spiritual care, Lillian's work has touched countless lives across the globe. So grab a cup of your favorite beverage, take a deep breath, and get ready for a conversation that's sure to inspire and empower you. Lillian, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
So, Lillian, beginning with your story, it's so powerful. So, for our listeners, can you take us back to the moment when you realized you needed to heal and take that first step toward recovery?
Okay. I am a person who has been in long-term recovery, so it's been pretty close to 39 years, I believe.
Wow.
Yes, and I started dabbling in
Mm-hmm.
drugs and alcohol when I
Mm-hmm.
was a teenager. And I came from a very dysfunctional family where
Mm-hmm.
addiction was rampant in our family. Um, my father was a raging alcoholic. He was emotionally and mentally
Mm-hmm.
abusive to us. He never hit us, but we also witnessed physical abuse of my mother. So
Mm-hmm.
we lived in fear. So I know you mentioned trauma care, which,
Mm-hmm.
part of what we've come to realize as a ministry and as a nonprofit is that the majority of people that are trying to overcome addictions have trauma in their background. They have family of origin issues that have to be unpacked. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot going on underneath the surface of their behavior. So their behavior is
Mm-hmm.
external. It seems like that is where the focus is, but we believe in root cause recovery. And I know that because of my personal experience. So back to a little bit more of my story,
Mm-hmm.
because of what I grew up in, what I witnessed, um, the trauma and the fear that I experienced in my family of origin, that led to me becoming a perfectionist. And in one
Mm-hmm.
area of my life, I was trying to perform in order to get approval and to perform and try to be perfect in every way to get love. And we all have those emotional needs. So I finally ended up connecting with some young people, my peers, who
Mm-hmm.
were, in the whole drug and alcohol scene. And because they were more accepting and seemed to be more inviting than a lot of the other peers that I had encountered growing up,
Mm-hmm.
I really got sucked into that lifestyle. So that's where it all started. And so, that link to feeling like, okay, the need to belong. So that was part of it. Being accepted. Um, Finally finding people that I thought genuinely cared about me, but they didn't. They were all about partying, just like, we're all, I believe the majority of humanity overall is always
Mm-hmm.
looking for quick fixes,
Yes.
ways to deal with their pain. And it's hard to realize that you can actually change and become something that you've never even seen before, which is kind of what my experience was. So if you're surrounded by people that are always doing drugs or alcohol, or they're even addicted to certain behaviors that are socially acceptable,
Mhm.
that is always your go-to. So that's what you do and that's all you know. Um, but anyway, after having years of substance abuse, I really got to a point where I hated myself. I truly did. I looked in the mirror
Mhm.
and I just hated the person that I'd become. And then I kind of got into this mode of depression and self-pity, and I just wanted to end it all. And so I attempted suicide. And through that suicide attempt, that's when um, everything kind of came crashing in.
Mhm.
And I began to look outside of myself and realize that there were other people in this world that were doing life, they were doing life differently than what I had chosen to do. Because by this time, I had a wonderful career. I was climbing the corporate ladder. And for people on the outside to look at me, they probably would have thought, you've got it all together. You're doing great. Well, that was not the reality. That was not the truth. Um, but through that suicide attempt, that's when I really believe, I had a spiritual awakening, which is why we talk about really trying to help people holistically. So it's body, soul, and spirit. So
Mhm.
I had an encounter and I realized in that moment that I really didn't want to die. I just didn't want to hurt anymore. And that took me into my recovery journey. And then I started realizing, wow, there's a lot that has to be unpacked here. And there's a lot of things that I've
Mhm.
chosen to do along the way just to try to navigate through life, and they were very unhealthy.
Mhm.
So because of my own personal experience and now being on the other side of this so many years later, um, it's like I want other people to have what I'm experiencing. And even my husband, we partner in ministry together, and we want more people to understand that there is a way out, and also to realize that you can get to a point where you can enjoy your life, you can feel whole and complete. Your life has value, there's
Mhm.
purpose, there's meaning. So that's pretty much my story, and it took a while to overcome some of those things, so we realized that, healing and recovery is a process.
Mhm.
So it's never instantaneous, obviously, so there's a progression, but we really have to focus on all the parts of the person, body, soul, and spirit.
Mm. Wow, I mean, it's so relatable, and it really takes a lot of courage to openly share, candidly share the highs and lows of your life with all the listeners. So thank you, Lillian, so much for sharing your journey with us. Also, definitely addiction often comes with layers of trauma. So, how did you begin to untangle the two in your healing process?
Well, I believe that you can't do it alone, so you definitely have to invite people into the journey with you. So you need a solid network of support.
Hmm.
You need a community of people that understand the value of digging deep and going into those root causes so that the healing can begin. So you have to have trusted, safe people. And that was part of my personal journey. So I got
Okay.
involved with a recovery program that was well suited for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I had accountability, and
Mm-hmm.
I also had some people that were willing to walk alongside me, as I was working through the trauma and working through the hurts in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the key components that I felt was very valuable, which we've incorporated in what we do, and that is having those times away where you could have a whole weekend where you're focusing on that inner healing. And so we do that here as part of what we provide. So every few months, probably every 3 or 4 months, we provide weekends where people can just check out and get focused on the work that needs to be done in a safe environment. And then we utilize a lot of tools, a lot of experiential processes that we help people go through so that they can get to the other side of their trauma, just like I did. So for me, early on, I was going to these retreats, and it was probably every 6 months, so probably twice a year. I would just check out for the weekend and go and be with a group of other women that were safe women. And everyone there was being transparent and open and honest about the work that needed to be done. And we went through these exercises. We heard some teaching, which is also what we provide, and give people the opportunity to heal, just like I was given that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. That's really very, such an important insight, community support and, seeking help of others as well in the journey to recovery. Also, when we talk about relapse, many people think of it as a failure. So how do you view relapse within the broader context of recovery?
Well, I'm thankful that I never experienced relapse,
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately, the majority of people do. And if they don't experience relapse, what I'm seeing is that if they don't go through a process of root cause recovery,
Mm-hmm.
they will just switch addictions.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of things right now that I think are more socially acceptable addictions. So, for example, what I'll say is some people, let's say alcohol was their drug of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Then they'll switch that, and instead of going back to the alcohol, now they'll do something that's more socially acceptable and go and use, abuse kratom or some of the other things that are out there and available that are more natural and not as deadly or life threatening, but they're still substances that you're creating this dependency on. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing is true for people that have had a drug problem. So now they go back out into the world and they're using alcohol. So they start drinking alcohol where they weren't a quote unquote alcoholic, but they certainly will probably become one because they're not dealing with those root causes. So
Mm-hmm.
relapse is never a failure, but it can lead to just even additional and more destructive behavior and also eventually death, unfortunately. Um, Especially with the drug
Mm-hmm.
arena and what's available to people right now, because fentanyl is a killer. And
Mm-hmm.
so we try to get people to realize the seriousness of relapse, especially if they've been doing drugs for a long time. So we try to tell them, you don't have another relapse left in you. You don't know what's going to happen if you go back into that. It
Mm-hmm.
could be deadly. So we take it very seriously and we share with people what the statistics are showing us. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's higher than 80% of people that get into recovery that go into relapse, um,
Mm-hmm.
because that 80% statistic is coming from old data. And I think the newer data would probably reveal much more than that. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it also should get our attention for those of us who are trying to help people in recovery. It should get our attention to say, okay, what we've been doing is not working very well, right?
Mm, yeah.
And which is why we're trying to do something different than what the medical model is actually providing. Not to say that the medical model might work for some people, but it's not working for the majority. So
Mm-hmm.
that means we have to do something different. And a lot of what we provide really comes out of my own frustration because as I'm helping people and I'm seeing this isn't working. Okay, this isn't working. This is not working. So what do we need to do differently? And so we're trailblazers. So we try to create, a new trail, a new path for people to take that might actually work and save their lives. So out of our frustration, it's like, okay, let's start being more holistic in our approach and let's help people rewire their brain. That let's help them to actually utilize some of the natural things that you can do to fight depression and anxiety and deal with trauma, and let's hit it head on and let's stop suppressing or
Exactly.
trying to avoid it. Let's just, the have you heard of like the power of positive thinking? So that
Yes.
work, right? Um, you have to deal with the past before you can
Mm,
look forward to your future. So, positive thinking and speaking affirmations over your life, that's not going to work. You have to deal with the negative before you can get to a place where it's like, yes, I can grab onto the positive and actually believe it and have a future. So,
mm,
I know that's a lot that I just put out there, but
uh,
yeah, it's we want to help people and again, if they relapse, there's no condemnation in that at all. It's like, okay, let's learn from that. And I
exactly.
heard a speaker one time, he said this, he said, if you're going to fail, fail forward. Okay, I
Mm,
get that. So if I fail, I need to take that failure and look at it and say, okay, what can I learn from this?
exactly.
Right? So that I can go forward. So that's our approach to relapse. Let's learn from those experiences and let's say, okay, how can I prevent this from happening again? How can I fail forward? Learn from this experience and just keep going forward and not beat myself up. There's no condemnation here. Let's use it for good.
Mm, very, very inspiring. Also, Lillian, you emphasize holistic wellness in your work. So, what role did holistic practices play in your own recovery journey? And are there any specific practices which you would recommend to our listeners as well who are facing similar situation?
Oh yeah. So I think one of the first things is to get with someone who is holistic in their approach to helping people get well and to enjoy healthiness in their overall life. It doesn't even have to be someone who's focused on recovery per se, because we're also lifestyle coaches as well as counselors. So we
Mhm,
understand that what you're consuming and the things that you're doing or not doing are related to nutrition, supplements,
mhm,
exercise. Those are things that are available to all of us, which doesn't take a lot of money per se to
mm,
actually pursue. So you can change your lifestyle and just begin to incorporate more organic foods, less toxins.
mhm,
Sugar is a big one. Sugar is a drug. People don't like to talk about that because a lot of
mm,
times what happens with addicts in particular is that they like I said earlier, they switch addictions, but that would definitely be one that would be more socially acceptable. Okay. So that's why if you go to support group meetings, what you see is, coffee and just a ton of sweets. So then, for alcoholics in particular, they don't even realize that, alcohol is actually turning into sugar within the body. And so that's
exactly.
just another form of addiction. So, lifestyle changes that can be made, one baby step at a time, so changing your eating habits, getting out in the sun. If
Mm,
you're not able to get out in the sun, most people who are dealing with depression are deficient in vitamin D. So
mhm,
that's something that they can do with their medical doctor is just get their vitamin D levels checked. A lot of what we provide here and we will continue to provide is doing like a hair analysis, which helps with mineral deficiencies. We can identify those. toxic levels that are affecting their brain and their lack of the ability to actually think clearly. They all have brain fog, and that's true of the majority of people, especially here in the United States, by the way. There's a
Mhm.
lot of toxins in our environment as well as in our foods. So, those are just some very simple things, some strategies that they can do immediately. The vitamin D, walking, just doing some mild forms of exercise every day, changing their eating habits, removing some of the toxins in their environment. Those are just a few things that they can do right away. Now, what we are going to provide are also some natural, holistic modalities that can help, like infrared sauna and red light therapy and other forms of light therapy and some acupressure points in the ears that will actually help with depression, anxiety. And so there's a lot available to us today that people are not taking advantage of instead of going the medication route. And I get it, some people have mental illness and there are some things that have to be done medically speaking, but I'm seeing that it's overdone. Let's try every natural approach possible first before we even go down that path. So that's our thinking. So as your listeners are, tuning into this broadcast, that those are just some key things that they can do without even seeing a physician if they choose not to. Just exercise, begin to change your eating habits, more natural foods, more organic foods, incorporate those things into their lifestyle, and that's going to help their brain.
Definitely. Great, great, Lillian. And before we wrap up, our listeners, they wish to connect with you and also explore your work with nonprofits and through your writings, how they can do that.
Okay, we would love to hear from anyone, and you can check out our website, The Ranch. That website is Aruka, which is ARUKAH. So it's Aruka Ranch .org. And by the way, Aruka means to heal, restore, and rebuild. So there's contact information on our website, including our phone number, which is 734 here in the States,
Mhm.
629 3551. And certainly, if they're trying to reach out from another country, as I know you are in India, email is always a great way to connect with us, and you'll find that information on the website as well. We'd love to hear from anyone, and we're here to help.
Lovely, lovely. We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes for our listeners. And Lillian, thank you so much for this incredible, heartfelt conversation. Your journey truly reminds us that healing is not just possible; it is transformative, and it's never, never too late to start. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And to all of our listeners, let this be your sign to take that next step, whether it's reaching out for help, setting a boundary, or just showing yourself a little more compassion today. If this conversation has resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend, your loved one, your family members. Follow Inner Peace, Better Health, and let's keep these conversations going. Remember, your healing journey matters and you are never alone. Until next time, this is Sana signing off with love and light. Take care and keep growing. Thank you.